Chris Graham and Rod Mullins. We're going to talk NASCAR. Rod had the great pleasure of being down in Bristol this past weekend for the final playoff race of the first round of the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs, also the Xfinity regular season championship race, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series had playoffs going on this past weekend too. And when you're at an event for a few days, not only did Rod have to sleep in the last couple of days because you're just so wired after going back from the track and everything else that it kind of you burn out when it's all over. But you come back with a lot of news, a lot of notes. Let's start with Dale Earnhardt Jr. What is the latest with Dale? He got to run in the Xfinity Series race, and he actually ran pretty well.
Yeah, he ran pretty well. I was impressed with him. Of course, last year when he ran in the Xfinity race, car caught on fire on him and he had to pull into the pits and he was yelling at him to get the fire extinguishers out and so forth. But well, the problem he had this time around, I hate to say it, he had more problems this time around, but man, he persevered through the whole thing, went through two radios. I mean, radio went bonkers on him on Saturday or Friday night. And then he had to pull into the pits they swapped out a radio, I think, and then they ended up having to swap out his helmet. And then he raced so much of the race without his glasses on. And then he pulls back into the pits, gets his glasses because they came out in the helmet that he had swapped out, didn't think about it. And he said, hey, I think I did a pretty good job without having any glasses on while racing and so forth. But yeah, it was almost as if this was and people that are, literature and things like that, they can probably appreciate this Mark Twain-esque sort of comment by him. And when I say this, a lot of people were reporting that Dale Jr. was going to retire. This was going to be the end of it. And according to the way things came about on Saturday, he was talking about it on Saturday or Friday night. Saturday, I think, is when he also talked about it. He said, the reports of him retiring have been exaggerated, but I had to throw in that greatly exaggerated because I don't think you're going to keep this Hall of Famer down. Even though he turns 50 on October the 10th, he says he's not going to quit racing. He has no plans to race on the national level next year. Now we're saying national level. That means he could race on a regional basis somewhere in the Carolinas or somewhere around here, but it doesn't mean he's going to stay off the track for good. And the basic reason behind that is his Amazon deal. He got the Amazon deal, leaving NBC, and he said he wants to go and he wants to put everything he's got into that Amazon deal. He feels like that's only to be fair the first year, or at least that year that he's got to be involved with this. But he said, hey, I'm not saying that I might not come back in 2026 and run the race at Bristol or run somewhere else. But he said, I've got things I need to look at, and this is one of them. And in addition to, there's that thing floating out there too of whether or not his team will take it to the national level and go to the Cup Series, which I think right now, I think it's kind of a wait and see thing. I don't think we're going to see him in 2025. I don't see them being entered into a race or anything like that because of, an availability of a charter or number or whatever it might be. But I see them maybe looking at things maybe a little bit later down the road. But for right now, he's happy where he's at. He's wanting to enjoy, what time he's going to be spending next year with Amazon and so forth on this race coverage. And that's where he's spending his time. He enjoyed himself so much, in fact, that after the race, he said, I think I'm going to go over here and party till the wee hours of the morning. And he certainly did. He went over there, and I think him and his crew drank beer till about 2 a.m. at the racetrack on Friday night. So it was a good night for him.
Switch gears. Bubba Wallace finished third on Saturday night in the Cup Series race. Now he's not in the playoffs, so that was just a third place finish on its own. His status, in addition to 2311 status, 2311 still not signing the charter agreement with NASCAR, so you have to wonder what's their future. But apparently, at least for Bubba Wallace, we know what his future is. Give us the update.
Well, this kind of takes a big load off of Bubba Wallace's back. He has been one of those people that has been saying over and over, I'm fighting with everything in me to be able to go and to, try to finish these races out and try to do a good job. He has cited so many different things. Of course, he has cited mental issues and things like that he's had, of things, the expectations and so forth that are going at him. But I think this is kind of like a little bit of a reassurance for him. This is a reassurance to tell him, you're doing a good job. But as Denny Hamlin said, the 23 team needs to make the playoffs every year. So that's coming down from one of the co-owners. Michael Jordan, not really much of a comment from it, but Denny Hamlin gave him that vote of confidence. And he said, more than anything else, Wallace says he knows he needs to get better. He's gotten better so long as he continues that, but given the stats that he had this past season and so forth, everything improved over what he had last year. And I have to agree with that. It's just the thing of taking the next step. And that's what this team is going to have to do, is take the next step and determine, are they going to be on par with a Hendrick Motorsports, Kyle Larson type operation, or are they just going to be satisfied at being in the middle of the pack? That's what they're going to have to decide.
So we've talked business news with NASCAR the last several weeks regarding those charters we just talked about. Some more business news, and this is not good business news. The Cup Series losing one of its top sponsors.
Yeah, Geico, the Gecko. We've seen him on commercials and so forth. Sports Business Journal reported the end of the week that Geico was going to relinquish and give up its premier partnership with NASCAR after this season. Not really given any reason except the fact that it's unclear how much they were paying to NASCAR. They believe low seven figures annually for the category of the insurance rights, if you want to say the official insurance category rights in 2019. So it's kind of another one of those secret things about NASCAR. What's going on? How much money are they really spending? How much money are they really losing on this? But the statement that came out primarily was the partnership between NASCAR and Geico has demonstrated the immense value and weekly excitement that the two consumer-driven brands can create, and we're proud of the extraordinary brand value, exposure, and growth opportunities we've built together. But nothing about why they're leaving the sport. Now, it's like with everything else. I think everything's just tight right now for a lot of people. We were talking in the pits also about who steps up, or who are they going to get? Who are they going to get to replace a Geico? Are they going to slim this down? Because the talk is Xfinity is also going to kind of pull back a little bit more. Now, they're going to keep the naming rights for the series, but they may pull out as one of the premier sponsors too. That would pretty much leave Coca-Cola, and I'm thinking of there's one other there that is out of that bunch that probably still could kind of hang around. But you're kind of like, hey, what's going to happen? Are we coming back to the days of where, like the old Winston Cup, somebody's going to have to just stand up and say, hey, look, we're willing to put this much or so many million or $1 billion into this and have our names to a rightful thing of the cup. That's what it's going to remain. And, a lot of people were talking Coca-Cola. And I don't know about Coca-Cola right now at this point. Don't know what they're happy with what they're doing. At least at this point, they're happy. They're the official soft drink of NASCAR. So, there's nothing really going to be stirred about that. You don't see Pepsi on the horizon anywhere because Pepsi has kind of dropped all of this, what they tend to think is a frivolous kind of software and things of, spending this money on stuff and this racing thing. And they just don't want to be involved with it. So I don't know who's going to really step up with this whole thing of, where they're going to go from there.
Next story, I'm thinking, Rod, we're both big baseball fans. There's a trade deadline every year, and you're used to trades in baseball. I'm not sure I'm used to trades in NASCAR, but we had one announced over the past weekend.
Yeah, we had one announced. It was Rick Ware Racing getting Corey LaJoie from Spire Motorsports, and they went ahead and announced that this coming weekend at Kansas, they are going to do the swap, and it's going to be Justin Haley's going to be going over to Spire Motorsports, and Corey LaJoie is going to be going to Rick Ware Racing. So they both drove their last race for their respective driver on Saturday night. LaJoie's pending partnership with Rick Ware will mark his first stint with the team, while Haley is actually coming back with Spire Motorsports, sort of a homecoming, so to speak, because he won the 2019 Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona Speedway in just his third career NASCAR Cup Series start, which a lot of people might say that was a little bit of a fluke more than anything else. But still, it's one of those things. We haven't heard of this sort of thing happening, I guess, since probably the 90s. And I'm thinking along the line of the big one at that time, and that was Ernie Irvan coming in to drive for the deceased Davey Allison once Davey Allison had passed away. And then he leaves, and, it's just like Larry McClure and the rest of Morgan McClure just says, get out of here. We don't want you anymore. So he takes off and he goes to Robert Yates Racing, races the 28 for the rest of the season. And, a lot of bitter feelings right there with that whole thing. But this was one of those that was agreed upon by both of them. It wasn't just a one-sided thing. This was an agreed upon thing between the two teams because they feel like they need a little bit of a jump right now in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's interesting. No draft picks involved or future
Right.
considerations. So, unlike other sports, right? So, another move. This is just a move, but Ty Norris is in the news with a new ride.
Yeah, Ty Norris is one of those guys that's seasoned.
I'm sorry,
He's
not
yeah,
not a new
he's
ride. Yeah,
yeah,
I
he's
jumped the gun there.
he's a seasoned, experienced racing pro, but he knows driving. I mean, he
Yeah.
knows driving because he worked with Dale Earnhardt. He's also worked with a number of different race teams. Michael Waltrip Racing was just another, but they had him at Trackhouse, and then kind of abruptly here in the last couple of days, we hear he left Trackhouse. Why? We don't know, because there's a rumor going right now that Pitbull is looking at selling his share of what he has of Trackhouse Racing to somebody else. Now, whether or not that's actually true or not, that's just the rumblings of what we hear. And so Colleague Racing, which is the up and coming race car team, I think in the sport, and they're at ground level, and they announced that they had hired Ty Norris. And I don't think you could pick a better person to go and kind of catapult your racing team to the top really quick, because Matt Colleague, who owns Colleague Racing, team president Chris Rice, they're going to all work together. One of the major moves involving is to solidify its trajectory of the NASCAR Cup Series program well into the future, and I think they've got a good one with him too. He likes to have fun, but he's no nonsense at the same time. He knows what business decisions are all about, and sometimes he makes the unfortunate business decision, but he's pretty well at what he does.
We've talked about how important it is to have someone in that position. It costs so much money to just keep these cars on the track.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We've seen the estimate $40 million a year to keep one car on the track for the whole
Yep.
season, and that's the job of a chief business. We don't think about that. We think about the driver, we think about the crew chief, we think about the pit crew and the engineers back in the garage, but somebody's got to come up with the money for this stuff, and that's an important job. So
Yeah.
now getting back to the track and a change on the track. Harrison Burton was in the playoffs this year. He got eliminated this past weekend. And the odd situation where before he won that race late in the season and got in the playoffs, Wood Brothers announced he wasn't going to be back next year.
Right.
What is his future after this year?
Well, he's actually going to step down. He's going to go back to the Xfinity Series full time, beginning with the season opener at Daytona in 2025. A lot of people were wondering whether or not he was going to get a Cup Series ride. They're evaporating pretty quickly, I think, with the way that Spire and Rick Ware and some of the other teams are kind of looking at things right now. A lot of people are set. Unless something surprises us here before the end of the season. But he's going to join AM Racing for its third full year full-time competition in the Xfinity Series. They raced in the Truck Series for a number of years. It's a family-owned team. They graduated up to Xfinity Series in 2023. And of course, Burton's going to him after a 3-year stint in the Cup Series, which I think has given him a lot of experience. But I think it's also one of those things he's found out that, maybe it's not for me right now at this point. Maybe I'm not where I need to be. Although we heard him say when he won that race, he said, winning this race makes me feel like this is where I belong. this is where I need to be at, or this is where I need to be racing. But maybe this is something that's going to give him a little bit more of a push into becoming a little bit more of a predictable, steady driver rather than being the unpredictable. And that's what it was with the Wood brothers this for the last 3 years. He was either up or he was down, or he was running middle of the pack, or he was running in the did not finish qualifiers, one way or the other. So I think it's a good thing, a good move for him to be able to go back to the Xfinity Series, and he may find some big success once he goes back to the Xfinity Series.
Now, in the other podcast we recorded this week, Rod, we talked about your busy weekend down in Bristol, of course, the Cup Series race, the Xfinity race, the Craftsman race. There was also ARCA Menard Series East, the East Championship actually on the
Mm-hmm.
line this past Thursday night down in Bristol. Tell us about that race.
Well, this race was to determine the East Division Championship, and a win could, of course, put them into the playoffs, or at least this finality of the playoffs, of what they call the playoffs. But Williams Salwich, I hope I got that name right. He won his second consecutive ARCA Menard Series East Championship with his win at Bristol on Thursday evening. This was the race that took place before the truck race. He had an impressive season last year that ended with a championship. He had captured 3 victories, 7 top fives in 8 starts this season. He was dominant on the National ARCA Tour, winning 8 races, including 4 in a row: Salem, Elko, Springfield, and Milwaukee. And he is getting ready to make his Xfinity appearance that'll be coming up here. I think by the time they roll into Homestead Miami Speedway here in October. He's already made a couple of Truck Series starts. He's made 11 career starts in the Truck Series. He's one of these young guys. It's one of these up and coming drivers. And, as a matter of fact, at the truck race in March, he finished 11th. He qualified 4th and finished 11th. But he's going to make his Xfinity Series debut after he turns 18. So that's going to be a 1+ for him. The next thing is him and Connor Zilich. I think I've got his name. I hope I got his name right. He's racing for Dale Earnhardt Jr. He turns around, he captures a win at Watkins Glen in his first start ever as a race car driver, coming in the Xfinity Series. So when we talk about these two guys, William Swalich and also Connor Zilich, you gotta wonder. This is the youth movement. This is who's coming up through the ranks. These are the guys that's knocking on the doors of these younger drivers right now that may feel insignificant before it's over with if they don't start producing some wins here in the next few years. But these guys are the future of what NASCAR is going to be all about. It's just the big thing is, where does it take them from here? How far are they going to go? Are they going to be able to adapt and be able to make the improvement, or are they going to just stay where they've been for all these years?
Last news item here for our Notebook podcast. A new driver for Big Machine Racing, and the guy's a 2022 ARCA Menard Series champion. So it tells you, you have success at that level, you move up. Tell us this news.
Well, add this one also to the list. Nick Sanchez. He's going to be driving the number 48 Big Machine Vodka Spiked Cooler Chevrolet the 2025 season. It was announced by the owner of Big Machine Racing. He's going to be replacing Parker Kligerman, who said that earlier in the week he's kind of retiring from the sport. He's going to be stepping away from it. Sanchez is only 23. He has raced in the Craftsman Truck Series. He's won twice this season, driving the number 2 Gainbridge Chevy Silverado with Rev Racing. And like you said, he's a past series champion for the ARCA. He completed the truck race on Thursday night at Bristol, qualified 6th, finished 5th. He made the playoffs. So that's another, feather in his hat right there. And the team also announced that Gainbridge is going to be an associate sponsor of the 48 entry for next year.
Man, we got to get you to the track more often. You come
Oh,
back with a lot of news when you're down in the pits and in the media center. Man, you're just a busy weekend for you.
yeah.
Uh, well, Rod, as always, thank you for your time and your insight.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.